Welcome to Lifting Leaders Podcast, where we are unleashing leader possibilities to make a better world. I'm Crystal Roberts, and together with Trisha Ryan, we're diving deeper into some of the complexities of the world's most critical challenges and exploring innovative ways of navigating through them.
Through interviews with experts and leaders just like you, we're exploring what it takes to thrive as a leader today and examining new ways of thinking about how to creatively lead into a more equitable, socially responsible, and sustainable future. And the future starts now.
Hi, Lifting Leaders Podcast listeners. Welcome back. Today, we're embarking on the first episode of a special series focused on coaches and how their work helps to make a better world.
As many of you know, both of us are certified leadership coaches through the Hudson Institute of Coaching and professional certified coaches through the International Coaching Federation.
What you might not know is that our passion for coaching and its positive impact on others led us to join the ICF Washington State Chapter Leadership Board. This year, I am honored to serve as the president, and Trisha is the director of volunteer services.
Over the past several years, we've met some truly amazing coaches. Their diverse and impactful work has inspired us so much that we wanted to showcase just a few of these incredible individuals.
Some of these coaches we've met through our work with ICF Washington, and others through associations like Hudson. We hope you find their stories as inspiring as we do.
What we do know for sure is that if you utilize your strengths, follow your passion, and keep service to others as a guiding principle, you can make a positive difference in the world, no matter what career you choose. And a good career coach can certainly help that.
Yeah. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be inspired by the amazing work of these coaches. Let's dive into our first episode of this special series. We're here today with a really interesting guest, Meghan Patino. Meghan is a leadership and life coach with a passion for helping overwhelmed leaders refocus on what truly matters, creating impact and joy in their lives and work. Such cool stuff.
Yes.
As a former youth development manager, social impact leader, entrepreneur, and mother of three, Meghan understands the complexities of leadership on all fronts. Using science-backed, customized methodologies, she helps leaders build empathy, innovate, and reduce stress. Her 7-week research-based program supports leaders in unlocking their potential and navigating high-pressure environments with more ease. Meghan holds a master's in social work and a professional certified coach, PCC. She has worked with nonprofit executives, tech leaders, and public servant managers, guiding them toward authentic growth. Fun fact, Meghan and her family recently spent a year traveling the world, immersing themselves in the cultures of Ecuador, Colombia, Senegal, South Africa, and Bali. Now back in Seattle, she's embracing life's chaos with her partner of 16 years and their 3 kids.
Wow.
So welcome, Meghan. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for opening a space and welcoming me in.
And I can't wait to talk and dive more into that trip. That's going to be really fun. So Trisha, anything that you would like to say?
I just want to say I'm so excited. We're starting the series with Meghan and that we've got a lot to learn today. This is going to be fun.
So we'll just jump in with that first question. Tell us your story.
Well, first, I'm from Alaska. I was born and raised. And I say that because I'm someone that enjoys creating my own path and that sense of adventure that comes with it. My partner might call it a little stubborn, that independence, but I call it standing and knowing and trusting in who I am. So
love that.
And as mentioned, my background is in social work. I have my master in social work, and I did a lot of community development and organizing work with young people, with immigrant and refugee communities, really partnering with them to look at what's our vision for our community and what changes need to be happening, and supporting them to take action on those and creating a roadmap towards change. And as you know, what brought me to coaching, there was a tension I was experiencing working in the organization I was, and the pressure of the organization to hit high numbers, and my passion, which is do deep work with a smaller group of committed people.
Yeah.
And then there was also, that was an external tension. The internal tension was I was sensing there was a need for change in myself that I resisted a lot in terms of pivoting my career and where my gifts could be of service. I remember the moment I stopped the resistance. I was running along the Nooksack River and sun's dappling in. There's nobody else on the path. And the clarity hits me where my memory of it is almost audible. Like I need to quit. And there is another path emerging. I don't know what it was. And from that moment, I was just committed to trusting that the compass I was sensing in myself. And then a few weeks later, I met this woman in a hot tub, and she was a coach.
Oh.
And I had kind of dismissed coaching as an industry prior.
Yeah.
And then her authenticity and her question of who do I want to be in conversation with struck me. And I realized I've always been in conversation with leaders and even untraditional leaders about what is your vision? How do we create a roadmap to get there? And how do you gain experience to be able to feel in your body your own agency to make change?
Yeah.
So that had really been my work I had been doing, and realized, I started researching coaching and realized, there's beautiful alignment here.
Yeah.
And I joined a year-long rigorous coaching program with Accomplishment Coaching. And in 2020, I started my business coaching.
I love that.
And then since then I just geek out on coaching, on the neuroscience of how do our brains work, and how to support people to tap in, gain the insight, but then also how do you support people to build habits to tap into the parts of themselves that have that sense of agency and power or curiosity or deep empathy for their experience and those of others. So I love the people I work with, and I always feel like being an entrepreneur is its own self-development course in action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so true, isn't it? And I love that you had the courage to step off before you even knew what you wanted to do, but you knew the path you were on wasn't the one you wanted to continue on. Yeah, love that.
So you've really sort of told us what led you to become a coach, or what led you down this particular path in your career. And I'm just wondering if there's anything that beyond that, or anything in addition to that really kind of set you off to embark on a new adventure.
I always think the work I do with others is also my own work that I am embodying. And stepping into a sense of my own agency to curate the life that aligns to my values and my vision is that's my own work. And, for us as a family, a longtime dream and vision of ours was to take a year to travel. And for me, this was about how do we step out of what can feel like the rat race and the high pace of American life with 3 kids. So how do we value quality time as a family and learning through cultural immersion, and then adventure and fun? And, that took us on a year where we were learning Spanish and surfing on Ecuador's coast, to camping and canoeing in the Amazon forest. Our kids were playing baseball with a Colombian local team from Cartagena. We lived with my host family in Senegal that I lived with 20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Our whole family lived with them. There's 20 people living in this house. It's during Ramadan, and we're figuring out how did we share life and and understand this culture, to screaming under waterfalls as we're guided through ancient Balinese and Hindu water blessing ceremonies. So it's just this wild adventure. And it was really embodying, can I step into this? Is what I want actually worthy of us changing our whole life around to do this? And it was one way that it was kind of like my way of embodying my values. Totally took me off a beaten path of what we were doing and to hop on that adventure.
Yeah. Wow. A lot of courage. So how did you go about aligning this vision of family world travel into action and reality? It's one thing to have a dream. I think, I've talked to many people who have that dream. It's like, oh, let's just chuck it all, right? And we're just going to go travel the world. But to actually make it a reality, that's a huge thing. How did you go about doing that?
Yeah, I want to, as I answer this, just acknowledge I want to acknowledge the work it took to do it, and also acknowledge where privilege plays of people could do all this work and also not have access to being able to do this. So, but the work that it took to step into this adventure, first it was listening to the small whisper of like, oh, this sounds like this would be a delicious idea. Oh, that's not. And then, 10 years ago, I was just like, who does that? I'm a social worker. Like, how can we afford that? Like, no way. But slowly, as I actually took time to keep listening to the whisper and allowed space for it to grow. What could this look like? Okay, voicing it out loud to my partner. Hey, I really want to do this. Like, what could this look like? How could we do this? And then starting to take small practical steps. And for us, for the longest time, the only step was save. Let's just put some money and start saving for it. But as it got closer, the year before we left, where the reality of, hey, my partner's going to quit a job. We need to get rid of half of our belongings and be able to rent our house. Kids are not going to be in school. All of these steps brought in so much fear because we're stepping out of our normal daily life. And so a huge part that I didn't realize was going to be part of this journey is being able to metabolize all of my own fear and anxiety that was growing leading up to this. Even though this is something I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. And then I was very present to how much fear and anxiety was creeping up as this dream is causing us to step way outside of our comfort zone. One of the things of embodying my own work I do with clients is being able to normalize that fear is going to show up. And for me, that fear shows up in a very critical voice. Often call it the judge voice. Who are you? Like, who are you to be able to do this?
Yep. Yeah.
Or like, this is really irresponsible for your children. You're going to take them camping on the Amazon? And I have learned to look at, oh, hey, there's the judge being activated in my brain. This is a circuitry in my brain being activated. That's not real or true. And how do I build distance from it and deactivate that part of my brain? And some of the practices that I would, I'd wake up at night thinking about, is my daughter going to be okay camping here on the Amazon? What are the parasites that are there? And actually doing some of the real embodiment practices. I often like the word presencing practices. We often use mindfulness, but it's actually getting out of our mind and coming back into our bodies. And so, in 10 seconds, we have the ability to pause all the activation of our fear brain. And so for me, the sense of touch is a really great way. So at night I would sit and I would put my hand on my chest if I was feeling anxious about what the heck we were doing, and like feel the warmth of my skin on my hand, or feel my heart beating, come back to breath, so that I could just deactivate my fear brain that is imagining the worst case scenario future.
Yeah.
And, you know, the image I always have, Elizabeth Gilbert, she often talks about how this character, the fear brain, the judgment, it's like it wants to take the steering wheel, and our job is to like click it in the back seat. And so all those like practices of presencing, it's like it is taking that fear and being like, nope, you're in the back seat. I see you, but you're not taking the steering wheel, and you are not going to change the course that feels really in alignment for me.
Yeah.
So it really taught me all the messaging around follow your dream, like it's going to be amazing, and there's like unicorns and rainbows.
Yep.
And there is a part of that. Like we got to have those moments, but I had to work through and metabolize so much fear before and during to stay the course. And so it was I really learned a lot about the messy journey it takes to follow through on a big goal and a big vision.
I love that. I'm so happy that you shared the whole story, right? It's like you said, it's not just hearts and unicorns. And I think oftentimes, especially in this Instagram world, we see the beautiful pictures and we think, oh, we could never do that because I have so much fear. And what you're saying is that you had the fear, you had the anxiety, but you figured out a way to work through it. And so it didn't stop you from achieving your dream. And I think that's just so helpful for people to hear.
I do too. And I really love that you did map out that whole idea of metabolizing your fear.
Yeah.
You know, it's such a somatic experience, I would think. It sounded like, you know, you're listening to your heart, or you're you know, sensing it beating and feeling your skin, and all of that it's so somatic. And I think people don't often take that part as seriously, or they don't want to take it to heart because they feel like that may be just an offshoot experience. It's not really that important, but it's terribly important. And to pay that much attention, to me, is one way to move through.
Yeah.
You know, and so I'm really very grateful that you said something about that, because that's something that is so hard for some people to grasp.
Yeah.
So just gave us a couple of experiences that you had in different countries, and I think amazing. And now I want to start going on a new journey myself. But what are like a couple of peak moments that you had from this trip? And in those peak moments, why were those peak moments for you?
There was a moment where we were camping in the Amazon forest up in northeastern Ecuador, and we had just witnessed Ecuador vote whether we protect Yasuni National Park or not. This is a rainforest that's been protected. And we witnessed the country vote to continue protecting this sacred Amazon forest. And this was through a grassroots movement led by the indigenous groups in Ecuador. And now here we were walking up this like 10-story tower so that you get to be above this tree canopy to witness this very fragile, very important ecosystem for our whole Earth. Mm-hmm. And we all were up there with our kids taking photos. And I was one of the last ones to walk down. You know, I always had my daughter clipped to my back. And we were about to walk down, and I just see these two blue macaws soar over this green canopy. And this sense of like, this is only what you see in National Geographic, and here my eyes are witnessing this. And I think it was so meaningful to me, one, that moment, but also that particular trip, the camping in the Amazon, brought up so much fear for me that I wasn't expecting. Because I booked that out of just pure joy and enthusiasm. And then as people were saying, like, oh, don't you know there's these like bugs and they bury larvae and then larvae bursting through your head, or there's these little fish that swim up penises. I'm like, what? Like all these fears. And then being able to relate to this place with so much through the eyes of our guides. This place was their place of coming back to a sense of themselves and home. And it became that for us. And getting to see this place through their eyes, and knowing it took like being proud, like, oh wow, I had to go through a lot to get to this moment, in terms of just, again, like melting my own fear and anxiety. And we had so many moments, and for our kids to touch this part of the earth and to see it and value it.
I would think that alone, just watching your kids experience something that is so different from the world they have to go back to at some point, right? It's like, especially, I don't know how old your kids are. How old are they?
Yeah, so they're now 15, 12, and 4. At the time that was almost a year ago that we were in the Amazon.
Yeah, and so those are such impressionable times in their lives, right?
Yeah.
So that's amazing that they got to experience that at this point in their lives so that it can perhaps impact or have some influence on their future.
Yeah. Yeah. And how they see themselves as citizens of the world. Yeah. Yeah. So did you have any moments of panic or dread while traveling?
So this also ties back to being in the Amazon. Wonderful experience. We're there. We left the Amazon. We were in Quito. Carlos, my oldest son, he had this high-grade fever that wasn't going away. We had all these tests, and nothing came back. Everything came back negative. At the same time, my other son, Julian, he complained of these bumps on his head. I'm like, I don't know, ingrown hair, maybe there's a zit, but we're dealing with Carlos right now because he's got this fever. Well, Carlos gets better. We're now in Cartagena, and these bumps are still there. And my mom, who is a marine biologist, she sends me the hey, look at botfly larva and see if, and I'm reading about botfly larva, and I'm looking at these bumps on my son's head that aren't going away. And I see some defining characteristics, and I was like, I think we have to go get these checked out. And so in the moment, we went to a medical center. And for those that don't know what botfly are, they are eggs. Through mosquito, their eggs of a fly are implanted basically underneath the skin. They like the scalp and hair. And then basically these, the host is the great host to just birth these flies that will eventually pop out of your head.
Oh,
and I went to the medical center, and I'm like, do you think, is that what it is? And they said, yes, I think these need to be surgically removed from my 12-year-old son's head. And so that was a moment. I was like, I cannot believe this is what we are doing. And luckily my son was such a champ, calm through it all. They had to have 3 incisions. They removed larvae. You can see the stripes on the body of these flies.
Oh my gosh.
And, I was like, I asked him, and here's kind of like the worst case scenario coming into real life.
Yeah.
And, I could have a sense of humor about it. But I asked, we walked out of there after 3 hours of and he had to get 3 stitches because and we walked out and go, Julian, It's like, do you regret that we went to the Amazon? He said, Mom, I have no regrets.
Oh.
We love him.
And now he has a
as an
fantastic
example,
story.
yeah, it was an example of, even like for me, even when the kind of the worst case scenario came to be,
Yeah.
I had the ability to like tap into sage brain, like the calm brain. Okay, what do we need to do? And just take the calm, clear next step, and to recognize, like, even when we hit the bumps, like we can handle it.
Literally.
We can navigate it. Yeah, literally.
Yeah, it's knowing that you have the capability to deal with anything, right? And
Yeah.
and he wasn't going to die. It was gross. Took time, but he has a fantastic story as a little
He has
boy
a
to tell.
fantastic story.
It's
for
a
the rest of his
story,
life.
but what a cool lesson for him at that
Yeah.
age to say, I'm not going to internally combust with,
Yeah.
with something like this. So when something hits me in the future, I think I could probably take a look at it with a more realistic viewpoint rather than get irrational and have some kind of knee-jerk reaction
Right.
to it, right?
You modeled that so well for them. Yeah, it's like, well, all right, now what do we do?
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Oh.
Love it.
You've only been back for a couple of weeks, but what are you noticing that has shifted within you? So how is this impacting how you live your life now, and how is it impacting your coaching?
Yeah, I noticed something shift when our plane was landing back in Seattle. We were coming from Bali. We'd been out of the country for 11 months. And I almost, it was like I witnessed the voice that's like, hey, you need to be doing something more. Like, you're not doing enough. Almost. I'm like descending into it. I was like, oh, wow. I know that voice is a part of me. And I know I internalize that voice from our society that values efficiency and productivity and, over our own humanity.
Yeah.
And so I know that voice is a part of what I have to be really mindful of to intercept. And having this experience of really owning what's most important to us, to me, is helping me to continue to intercept this, like, hey, you need to be doing more. You're not doing enough. You need to be like, that hurry, hustle mentality. And so it helps me to I have the mental muscles, to strengthen a little bit more to intercept it. Now, I'm saying, like, that voice is still like loves to want to butt up in me, but imagining where we've been and also being amidst some of the people and the relationships we've met, and recognizing that sense of hustle and hurry and efficiency is unique to our country it's just so accented in our country in ways that other places are not. And so to be able to have a little more bird's eye view on that, and to allow slow a little more, and to trust slowness, of like, oh, you plant seeds, trust they are going to sprout, but I don't have control of that. And how do I, again, ease that anxious, like, okay, I need to be moving faster than what I am. And a lot of my work with clients, it's also supporting them to differentiate their true sense of grounded who I am from that sense of anxious, hustle, need to do more, need to please, so that they get to tap into, like, oh, I get to be human. And when I do that, I actually end up showing up as my best self. It actually ends up being the path towards where they want to go, but we often sabotage it because, one, the messages in our society, and then we internalize them. And when that fear brain's activated, they can just, like, try to take the wheel. And they burn us out and they take us out.
Yeah.
That is so true. It's like we say that we want to have a more calm and present and, centered life. And yet we live in a society where that's really not supported very much. We are, to your point, it is something that is, from what I've read, unique to this country. And I love that you've recognized that and that you're able to share that with your clients in a way that they can see within themselves that, there's a value in slowing down and being present and taking a look around, right? That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I love, because I think so many people can tune into that truth, like, oh, that would feel so much better. But then also how research and all of the neuroscience research is showing, like, we tap into our empathy and innovation and like clarity when we are not stressed, stressed out and hustling. And so it really is, there's so much research shows that is an effective path too.
Yeah,
but again, it's counterintuitive in our culture.
You talked about things that that had changed or things that are different. What about things that haven't changed when you got back? Is there anything that continues to hold true for you in your thinking or in your experience that maybe was holding or was your reality before you went on your trip?
I think that's a good question. I think the value of adventure, that was always a part of me before. I think and it continues to be a part of me. So adventure in no way needs to look like global travel. It can, I'm looking at, how does adventure show up here in our daily routine with 3 kids who go to school and have sports and, we're working our jobs. I think that the kind of like playful outlook to be like, but it can show up here too. So that's something that has stayed with me. And I see that it might take a little more creative thinking when you're in your routine of like, how does that get to show up? How does that fun and play? But we're finding ways for that. And so that continues to be a constant thread for me.
Such a good call out.
Yeah, I love that. It can even be as simple as when you go to the grocery store picking something new and different. I picked up some different kind of berries that I've never seen before. And it was like, this is interesting. Let's see what this tastes like.
And looking for different ways to use it, right?
Yeah, different ways to use different recipes and different things like that. Yeah. We grew in our garden this year, we grew tomatillos. And
I love tomatillos.
Yeah, they're so good. But also the plant was really beautiful, which I didn't realize. And so, it's like just choosing some things that are different outside, like you were saying, outside your comfort zone or your normal habits and routines can spark that sense of curiosity and adventure. Yeah.
And there's so many, I live in Seattle and there's so many cultural events where that's one of the places like, we're going to like a hula Polynesian celebration this weekend. And again, this taste of our world, that's also the beauty of the mosaic of the community we're in. And, I just have to drive 10 miles south to go to this event.
Yeah, right. It's right close. Yes. Love that. Everyday adventure. So I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Knowing what you know now, would you do this kind of adventure again?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I liken it to natural childbirth. Where it's like, it is, it's intense and it may not be for everybody. Like, choose your own journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it brings up so much, but like how much it's so alive, so presencing. Like we are living life and sucking the bone marrow out of it. And it's the roller coaster. And that's how I want to live. I'd do it again.
Would you do anything differently?
Hmm. In regards to our travel.
Yeah. Or just, was there anything that you sort of learned about, hey, next time this would be helpful for us if we were to do not this exact same thing again, but on our next adventure, whatever that is.
What would it be?
Yeah. What would I do different? What would I do differently?
Finding another pathway to connection. When we were traveling, I thought we would like do all this research before we went and maybe find an organization that we could just get engaged with. And the reality of our life leading up and this idea of having all this time to do research or whatnot didn't come to play. But we found some connection through baseball. But that was super meaningful. So just finding those points of those bridge points to bridge, our family to the local community.
Mm-hmm.
The ones we did found were super meaningful, and finding like having that be an anchor to our travel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something.
Love that. That's a great idea.
So, what advice do you have for somebody who's ready to take a big leap towards a bold goal, or maybe who has taken a leap and is now dealing with high levels of fear?
Yeah, I think it goes back to some of the things we talked about. One, please acknowledge yourself for listening to that. Like, recognize already you are showing up in bravery and courage. Mm-hmm. Normalize that there is fear that's going to show up as different characters within yourself. So be able to name when that's going to show up or what that character's like. What is it going to say? Like, even doing that ahead of time so that you can distinguish yourself from fear. And just like, okay, fear is going to show up.
Yeah.
That is not what is driving my bus.
Yeah.
And like, it's going to be totally normal that it's going to get louder because you are on the edge.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. You actually talked to us earlier about the metabolizing your fears, and you kind of went through your steps and stuff. But can you give us just a little more information about moving from like a fear brain into your sage brain? Because I think some people may not understand that, the distinction.
Yeah. So a lot of this language and using sage brain comes from positive intelligence.
Yes.
Yes. And so this is both a research and coach hub, and they've synthesized research from neuroscience and positive psychology, behavioral psychology. And they actually look at functional MRIs that when and see, there's parts of our brain really get activated. And often when we're hearing that like inner critic voice,
mm-hmm.
it is activating the survival parts of our brain, because our brain has a bias towards negativity.
Yes.
Because that helped us to survive.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then it sabotages us because we stay in comfort zone, we stay in what we already know, and that sense of being stagnant, like there's a languishing that happens within us. And so the movement to sage brain is like being able to just disengage from that part of our brain. And so again, a lot of those thoughts, like how do we get out of our thoughts? And then the shift to sage brain, what I love about how positive intelligence looks at the sage brain, they've really simplified all this research and have found there's really 5 main powers that activate this whole region of our brain where we get whole brain functioning. And that's empathy. How do we have empathy for ourselves and others? Another power is how do we explore, creative. How do we explore what's really going on? Innovation, that's the love of curiosity. navigation, which is about how do you really make choices based what's most meaningful for you, and then activation, and that's really how do you have clear, decisive action from a calm place. And so, there's I'm sure listeners and we all have all these sources of information, and I love this framework that these 5 sage powers, they layer well with any other with a lot of other research or frameworks out there, but it really simplifies it. And so if we can shift into those, it really supports us to keep being bold and taking risks towards what we really want. That's outside of our comfort zone.
I love that. We've actually talked about Shirzad Shamin's book, Positive Intelligence, before, and I think we've both been on a bit of the journey ourselves and love this, just love it. So thank you for bringing that out, because it's a good book, and I'm not here to promote Shirzad's book, but I tell you, it is helpful for people who need to make sense of it in a way that is easy to understand. And I think it is way easier to understand through his exercises and the stories that he tells in his book to help people get there. But I love that you're using that as a framework. It makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So you do leadership coaching, or you coach leaders. A lot of the folks that are listening to the podcast are leaders. We're focused on leaders, and that's not a formal role. And when we talk about leaders, we're talking about anyone who has an opportunity to influence, and that is all of us. So we're all leaders. So what can leaders take away from this discussion for themselves, those around them, their teams?
I think one thing, it was powerful when a client reflected back to me. She was like, "Oh, I thought I was the voice of the judge. I thought that was me."
Yes.
Wow. Yeah.
Like, I've been following that voice, thinking that's the thing I need to follow. So to be able to say, "Oh, that voice is not me."
Yeah.
And how do I cultivate some space for that other part of me? And how do I help metabolize the fear part? Because that's not who we really are. And so I hope that's just to build that curiosity. Oh, maybe that's not really me. And what's possible if that voice gets quieted? And not just for yourself. I mean, that's beautiful, but I think when we liberate ourselves from it, like, liberation is not a one-way street. You start doing that for those and those around you.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that. Yeah. And kind of an obvious follow-up there, but how does this help make a better world?
I look at the political environment, and I can see when fear and survival and creating a hierarchy of humanity is the tools we're using, that is all our survival fear brain. And so if we are supporting the development of leaders, of our humanity, to touch into these other parts of ourselves. Like, I believe that's where human evolution is going. And so we are changing how we're connecting in with ourselves. And I think that is so needed. We don't need, and I think it has huge impacts, and right now as we lead up to our own presidential elections, for me, it's clear to see who is standing in their sage, and then how fear is a really dangerous tool that gets wielded for oppression.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Thank you.
So if you've ever heard us before, you may know that we have an initiative that we've been working on for the last little bit over a year now, and it's called the Hope Initiative. And we have some hope questions, and I'd like to ask them.
Wonderful.
So the first one is, where do you see signs of hope in the world today?
2 things come up for me. I go for a run in the park near us, and I will stop early morning. I will stop by the tree. This tree has no one's around, and I'll just put my back up against it, and I will think, this tree at one point was an insignificant little sprout. And just the wisdom of something being steady and steadfast and slow, and the impact of it. So nature. And the other place, I find so much hope in the stories around Black liberation. I took as many like African study courses in my undergrad that I could, and then in our travels, learning about so many movements towards liberation and resistance, and then getting to see the music, the dance, the joy, the stories that are told, knowing the history of so many people going through slavery. I'm like, there's an example of so much hope of a people's histories going through that and creating these expressions of joy and celebration.
So how do you sustain hope in yourself?
Dance is so much a part. I love dancing, creating space for it. I take myself on artist dates. This is a practice from Julia Cameron, but these are spaces just to, it's 2 hours, only by yourself, to explore your own curiosity, or like, ooh, what do I feel like doing? Asking that question, and there's no to-do list, there's no trying to be efficient or get something done. But it just brings me back to my own sense of energy and wholeness if I allow that space. And when that's there, I got a lot of hope. I'm an optimistic person, but if I'm drained, that part goes.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I love that. What a great idea. I love that.
Artist space.
Yeah.
How do you engage or inspire others to be hopeful?
I think we're all born inspired and hopeful, and we have our natural inclinations, and it gets covered up. And so I think it's listening and being able to reflect back to people, oh, I'm seeing this lighting you up. And inviting people to be curious there in that place in themselves. Because we got so much cultural conditioning that just says, ignore, this is what you should be doing. And we cover up our places of inspiration.
And add to that any personal experience people have had, like early on in life, that can also be a hindrance. No, that's beautiful. Thank you. If you could come up with one word, just one word, that represents hope for you, what would that word be and why?
It'd be bridge.
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 Oh,
I love that.
Yeah.
That's a new one, I think.
We haven't heard that one yet.
Because it, for me, it connects us from where we are to where we're going.
Thank you. That's great.
Yeah, I love that. So this has been lovely to get to know you a little bit better and understand kind of your adventure and what that's meant to you and how it applies to leaders. And what's next for you looking forward? What are you really excited about?
One thing I'm really excited about, I'm reading this book. It's called Light Up. It's all about the power of metaphors. And I'm just geeking out. It's it's a lot of neuroscience and how so much of our brain is visual, even in our words. And so as a coach, how to listen for the way that these metaphors are showing up with the people we're working with. So I'm just geeking out on that and totally excited. And then I have some groups coming up to really support people to step into their sage brain, to step into brave living. And I've seen people just light up with their own ahas going through this program. And so I'm excited to be offering that again at the end of October. We'll be kicking off a new group there. And again, as I intercept my own fear brain and I'm excited to be in a stage of listening for what's also emerging now for me. It feels like a natural place of listening. Where am I drawn to keep showing up and being of service for people who are out here to make an impact? And so there's a bit of of listening and carving out space for that is what I'm noticing.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I love that space, right?
Yes, and it sounds hopeful to me. When you think about what do you have on your plate? What are you looking forward to? Where are you going? What's next? And it's hopeful, and we need that.
And I love the connection also, this idea of space back to coaching.
Yes.
Because we know that is the most powerful thing we do as coaches, is to hold the space for other people to be able to process what's going on with them and to dream and get curious. And so, I love that. Thank you so much, Meghan, for being on the podcast. I know I'm inspired. I hope our listeners are inspired as well.
Absolutely. This was wonderful. I think that it was not just your adventure, it was your roadmap in a way. And I think that's very helpful for people who maybe just have an inkling. They really are thinking they would like something, but they have no idea where to start. And even if it's not taking the adventure that you took, it's taking an adventure and being okay with that, and maybe being okay with the fear.
Yeah.
And working through that.
Yeah.
Metabolizing it. I love that.
So how do people get a hold of you? What's the best way to reach you if somebody is inspired and they think, I want to sign up for that October event, or I want to be coached by Meghan? How can they reach you?
Yeah. My website you can reach me at, and it's www.meghan, Meghan, meghanpatino.com. You can also email me at meghanpatino.com. I always invite a human connection. Ask your questions, discern if this program's right for you. There's a lot more information about it on my website that you'll see. And also on my website, you can sign up for my newsletter where you get some of human stories and bravery in your inbox. You can stay connected that way as well.
Lovely. Yeah, that's
Awesome.
perfect.
Yeah, great.
Well, thank you so much. This has been inspiring and enlightening and certainly insightful. I've really enjoyed it, and
I'm ready to go on my own trip.
I am too. Okay, we're not only we didn't just take off August off. We're going to take October and November off too. No, I'm kidding. Thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Well, that was delightful. I really enjoyed it.
It was so much fun.
Oh my gosh, it makes me want to go do something a little more daring than, although I'm loving the things that I've taken on this year. However, I'd like to try some new things.
Yeah. She's just so inspiring.
She really is.
Yeah.
Very, her message was beautiful. I thought the way she presented it was really lovely too. Yeah. So let's keep that conversation going. If you have questions or comments about our show, you can find us on all our social media channels at lifting_leaders. We have so many exceptional podcast episodes coming up, especially the ones coming up over the next several weeks with our new coaching series, with more fantastic guests. So be sure to subscribe to our podcast at Apple Podcast or wherever you listen. If you know someone who would find this episode inspiring, share it with them. Text them, email them, or take a screenshot and share it on your Instagram and tag us at lifting_leaders. If you'd like to know more about us, our guests, or the show, please go to our website at liftingleaderspodcast.com. You'll find our show notes there as well. If you're looking for help in developing your leaders or would like a growth opportunity yourself through leader coaching, please contact us through our website at www.liftingleaderspodcast.com. Thank you to Ari Chance Roberts, who has really worked hard for us, especially lately on our technical support, and we do always appreciate him. Finally, please take 30 seconds to follow us. It helps you because you never miss an episode, and it helps us because you never miss an episode. To follow us, go to Lifting Leaders Podcast Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, or wherever you listen. Then just tap the plus sign in the upper right-hand corner or click on follow. While you're there, if you'd be willing to give us a 5-star rating and review and share this episode with a friend, we'd be so grateful. Thank you, Crystal. Thank you for bringing Meghan to us. This was wonderful.
Thank you. It was just a blast, and great to get to know her a little bit better.
Yes. And many thanks to you, our listeners. We do appreciate you. Find ways every day to lift each other up. Have a great week.
Bye.